Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4 can have the most amazing roster that we've ever seen in a Dragon Ball game to date. So what you have in front of me is actually a Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 3 mod game, which was made for the PlayStation 2. I think it was made by some people from Latin America, and this one is quite crazy one because it just gives you an example how you can easily create these characters. Now you have Goku Ultra Instinct, we have Kaba, Caulifla, you have Kale, Kefla, what else we have here? Goten, GT. I mean, we have a bunch of characters here which could be actually in the new roster, right? And this is just an example because... So, the one thing that can happen in Budokai Tenkaichi 4 is that they can now draw inspiration from so many games. They can draw, and also from the anime, right? So they can draw from inspiration from the previous games, and then from the Super, from the Z, and from the original Dragon Ball. So just imagine for a second, you can literally make this game as expansive as you want. But let's actually look at the wiki and let's see how the game actually went in a kind of not that great direction in the Budokai Tenkaichi 3. So in Budokai Tenkaichi 3 we have, of course, a lot of playable characters, but the problem with this is that many of the playable characters were actually just like additional transformations from the existing characters, and many of the characters which we had effectively were very similar in combat moves, right? Now we had, this is just one example. Here we have the androids, the Bojack, Bertha, Cell, this stuff here, as you can see here, Frieza. And the problem we had here is that many of these characters had effectively almost the same moves, right? Which it was more like a skin than an actual character. It was still fun to effectively, you know, feel like you're playing with your character and your most favorite character and whatever. But the problem with it is that effectively it's just that is pretty much it. There's no additional incentive to effectively kind of make yourself feel that you are actually using your own character apart from just the skin aspect of it, right? So this is where Budokai Tenkaichi 4 can actually make some big strides in this, because it should make the combat for these characters much more different, and some characters should be better at, you know, doing like fast movements, others to keep their distance, others to potentially go like in close and, you know, fight really strong and close and don't have that much energy key, for example, in terms of doing like long distance beams. So they could really combine them and make each of these characters, or some of them, quite different, right? You can have different playstyles effectively. Recent, like, you know, fighter games effectively have these thing called the playstyle. So, you know, there's no like best or worst. Obviously when you play in the meta, in the PvP or whatever, there's always going to be a better character just because some particular moveset can be used a lot, as in abused, right, in a PvP environment. But for people who just play casual, effectively, this is really a good opportunity, because as you can see here, these are all the characters you can play and the new characters afterwards. So this is just to show you guys that this was in Budokai Tenkaichi 3. In Budokai Tenkaichi 4, just imagine for a second, I'm pretty sure what they're going to do is that they're going to start off with effectively the Z characters and some of the super characters at the beginning, and then you can unlock more of them in the game, and then afterwards with paid DLC, I'm pretty sure they're going to insert a lot of the characters from the Super Saga and from the movies, from the Super movies and from the Z movies, right? So Golden Frieza, for example, could be a possibility. Other characters such as the Universe 6 characters, or Jiren, for example, right, in the Tournament of Power, all these characters, or Kefla, right, for example, right, could effectively be in the game as post DLC release. Now, the reason I believe that they're not going to be there available at start is because, as we all know, in Xenoverse, for example, Xenoverse 2, they've released a ton of DLCs which are focused on additional characters. So I believe that what they're going to do is going to be something very similar. Now, in terms of the actual, why is there going to be mainly? Is there going to be mainly Z characters, or is it going to be super characters? My hinge is that effectively they're going to combine it and have like a half-half. So they're going to have a lot of Z characters, but then also a lot of super characters, because they want this game to be the, I would say, the quintessential experience of a Dragon Ball Budokai game. That's why they released the Kakarot first, because the Kakarot was to bring everyone together, to tell the story of the Z for the new generation and for the older generation. And then once everyone, because obviously the game sold a lot and people are now used to the story of Goku, now they can actually say, okay, so we're gonna bring in the Budokai Tenkaichi, and the Budokai Tenkaichi is going to focus a lot on, guess what? more stuff from the Super story, from the maybe GT story, okay? And this is a good thing because in Budokai Tenkaichi they can effectively bring in all these sagas together and give you a story mode which is specially made for the game, and also enable you to play with all these different characters. So my personal estimate is that the playable characters in the game is gonna go exceed beyond 100. I mean, the Budokai Tenkaichi 3, if I'm not mistaken, it had in total, I believe, like more than 160 or 140 playable characters, and of course this is with all the transformations combined, okay? So this is including every single transformation. But I believe that in the Budokai Tenkaichi 4 they're going to do something very similar, allowing transformations, and also they're going to add a lot of characters via paid DLC. Now I know that some of you guys don't like that word, paid DLC, but this is how, for example, Xenoverse 2 has lived for such a long time, because they've continued to release small DLCs for additional characters and people were willing to pay for it, right? Which of course makes it a business to make more money. But nonetheless, guys, my personal prediction is that the Budokai Tenkaichi 4 is going to be a split between Z and Super characters, but not just that, they're going to effectively increase it even further because players want to play with the Z characters, they want to play with the GT characters, and the Super characters are now very popular. Because we watched the anime, there's literally no reason for them to just not bring them to us, because in the anime we saw their moves, we saw their special abilities, we saw their like behavior on the battlefield and everything. So because we already have a reference to play with, of course, in our heads, it's much more easier for the developers to just use those references from the anime and then bring them back from the Super anime into the Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 4, or whatever name the game was going to have. So guys, this is quite exciting, to be honest, and I cannot wait to get my hands on this game, to be honest, because it's gonna be just freaking awesome. And of course, the roster, I'm pretty sure, is going to be absolutely ginormous, especially taking into consideration that the previous ones, the Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and 2 and 1, especially the 3, were quite heavy on volumes. Now, like I said before finishing this video, it's not just about quantity, we want quality. So let's hope that the playable characters effectively are going to be unique in their own way, because if they're not unique, then it's just going to be a bit boring to effectively play with any of these characters, because they're going to have very similar movesets. So this is of course my personal, I guess, request for the game developers, is that try to make some of the character classes a bit different in their playstyle, because that's when you're going to get a lot more engagement for the fans, and also you can then build a bit more like on the gameplay and give it more depth and richness. A Saiyan, for example, should play very differently from an Earthling, for example, right? They should have different approaches. Same as, for example, someone like Frieza should have a different playstyle compared to someone who is Bartok, for example, right? Or just give you a random example, Turles, for example, right? Or I don't know, Baby Vegeta, just to give you some examples on how they can make it better and make it more crazy with their characters, right? But guys, that's it for today's video. I'm gonna maybe release some videos on effectively this mod, for example. This is just an example of this particular mod where you actually have all these characters, and this is a really good reference for the developers, because modders already back in the day, they created these mods and they added these new characters effectively in the game to effectively give people more, like, for example, here we have Broly in his super form, alright, from the movie effectively, right? This is just one example. And then other stuff here, of course, I mean, there's just so many examples here, right? Yeah, but yeah, this is just cool how they can effectively make it so much more believable and so much more interesting, right? In the game itself. Goku mid, I like the Goku mid, so funny, right? But yeah, guys, that's it for today's video on this one. As always, I shall see you later in the next upload.